everybody. Welcome to today's Impact Talk. Today, we are elated to have with us Mr. Chander Damodaran, MD and Global CTO at Brillio. He is a problem solver, evangelist focused on bringing in the right mix of business and technical competency to solve large business problems. Thank you so much for joining us today, sir.
Thank you, Nikon. Thank you for having me on this conversation today.
So, sir, I'll jump right ahead with the first question. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey as a problem solver who uses innovation and digital technologies to solve challenges in large businesses?
Sure. Thanks for asking that question, Nikon. I think I've been a learner all my life, and I intend to be a learner for the next foreseeable future. And what that means is technology is what drives the world today. And right from when I started my professional career, I was with product firms. I spent a significant amount of my time working on multiples of products. And what it gave me was a complete different perspective on how you use technology to build meaningful products and solutions that impact customers and end users, right? So it gave me a lot of like I would say a sense of pride. So what it made me was it made me a learner for life, because technology is something that keeps evolving every day. From what we saw a few years back to what is now and what is going to come in the next few years, it keeps shifting so dramatically. And hence it's important, for a technologist to be a learner for life. And hence, I keep saying I'm a problem solver. What it basically means is there are newer set of problems that keeps coming in every day. And it's our, as a technologist, it's imperative for us to look at, the problem holistically in a very objective manner, and then try to put to a solution frameworks which can then be solved using technology, right? So that is what, makes me a problem solver. That's what makes me go on and on as a technologist.
Thank you, sir. I would move on to my next question, which is to some extent a little similar, but more about Brillio. So what is the philosophy and core mission of Brillio, and how does it as an organization look at innovation?
Again, a very interesting question, Nikon, right? See what happened, and I've been, again, thankful to be part of Brillio since we, actually formed Brillio. And something very purposeful when we started off Brillio, and this was, in the digital era, we said we want to have a firm that is meaningful for its customers, and which means to have a way to actually help solve these problems at scale for our customers, right? So we did not want ourselves to be, in 5 different ways. So the way we formed Brillio, the culture, the methods, the processes, and everything that we kind of put together to make what Brillio is today, it was all with the sense of purpose, which was very focused around, driving, things at speed. So agility was an important dimension that we involved. But a big part of this was weaving this with the customer as our true lens, right? So one of our core values revolves around customer success, which means our ability to help solve large industrial problems, using digital and technology, and making a big impact and creating value for our customers. And in the process, being, a partner with them. That I think is the biggest philosophy with which we started. And what we are doing, what we started off then, and 8 years later, what you continue to see is, us impacting this at a much, much bigger scale. And that continues to be the focus of what Brillio is, right? And obviously we leverage all the digital technologies that are out there. But again, it's very similar to the previous question that you asked me. The approach that we take is to look at what the problems that we have to solve and how do we consultatively put together a blueprint that is relevant for our customers, and they can actually start to see the real values, right, when they're able to take these products to their customers. So that is the philosophy with which Brillio is organized, and hence it kind of revolves around customer experience, product engineering, data engineering and analytics, and then infrastructure, right? All of this woven in a very consultative manner to basically take take a holistic look at our customers, journeys, and help solve that. So that's how we are structured, and that's how we are wired for driving innovation for our customers.
Right. So, sir, with COVID-19, Economies around the world, and especially in India, were forced to go digital even if they were not ready for it. So, could you elaborate on your observations regarding it? And what are the challenges, according to you, were some things that they faced? And have they been able to overcome it in this last 2 years?
Oh, absolutely. I think the whole pandemic was a big impact on a lot of firms, and I think it impacted both organizations and then personally on for every individuals as well. But I think it became a good teacher in the sense a lot of firms which were not embracing digital were either forced to embrace digital because they either, for example, if you look at it from a lens of an organization, they had to ensure that every employee continues to work but still has access to every systems, but not in a single place, right? Like being offline in the office and so on and so forth. So enablement of digital technologies, omni channels, integration, collaboration softwares, right, means and so many things that started to become important, which were probably a little bit relegated. The second, I think, dimension from people is also the ways of working, right? So we're so used to having hallway conversations, so many different things, but then it actually impacted their ability to now, having more offline conversations to becoming a more online type of conversation. So I think, and this is where I would say the fundamental theme is everyone realized that technology has to be used to drive very meaningful impact, right? Whether it is in terms of collaborations or whether in terms of value creations that we can do. And hence today we live in a world of digital, Nikon, right? So that's the world that we are in. And what pandemic did was to accelerate this at a much significant pace. In fact, I just recently published a white paper around how digital is becoming the way of life and how we are continuing to evolve. So if I were to just take maybe 2-3 dimensions from that and kind of lay out the context, right? So that becomes my sense of observation, and then I can talk through it. I think today it's all about how do you create the right customer experiences, right? And that experiences basically involves whether it is an offline experience or whether it is a digital experience or it is different channels of experiences, right? Whether you're using mobile, whether you're using immersive devices today, right? Whether you're using, let's say, a 3D lens or multiple things, right? So the theme of experience and looking at who your personas are, who your customer stakeholders are, right? There are different demographics, there are different types of like generations of people, right? Like somebody, a Gen Alpha will not align with what, let's say, Gen X or a Gen Y will say, right? So all of these basically translates into experience because that's how you will have to live in this world, right? So hence, how do you deal with using digital technologies to drive, great experiences, I think is one theme that we see emerging. And there is this accelerated super fast. The second big dimension that I would say is it's about, and when you look at, if it's a, a niche startup or something that is started now, they would probably have a choice to, look at their technology stacks, kind of build what they want to build. But when you look at large enterprises, right, they have invested, millions of, their dollars into, building their IT ecosystem. So you have to think about how do you start to rewire and modernize to this new world, which is completely, in a digital or phygital type of a view, right? And but at the same time not having to rip and replace, because with all the economic headwinds that we are seeing today, it's important for us to maximize the value that we can generate from the dollar that we spend, right? Hence, how do you look at the theme of digitization, where we are able to generate a lot more value by you reusing some of our existing investments, but then kind of starting to rewire this to this new world, right? I think that's a second big dimension that I'm seeing, as an impact from pandemic. But I think all of this leads up to a third important dimension, which is today, I think data has become the new oil. And I think we have used this phrase so often. But I think what is important for us to now realize is data is what drives a firm's decisioning process, not just for driving insights, but its ability to drive organizational processes, so on and so forth, right? So data-driven culture is becoming the new norm within organizations. So net summary is, you lead with experiences, you maximize the investments and dollars that you're making through digitization, and then look at data to basically make a lot of your decisioning processes, right? So the sum total of all of this, when you apply this, whether it is within the geography like India, or you look at it globally, or you look at it from different industry segments, right? Whether it is around banking, finance, or you look at it from retail, healthcare, so on and so forth. What we start to do is, how do we apply all of these three themes into different industries, right? So you have to look at a problem solving which is specific to an industry, and then say, I will use the power of all these three dimensions to draw that, right? So that's the fundamental shift that has happened. And that's why I see the pandemic as a great teacher, because it has accelerated the pace of digitization exponentially. And there is a lot more central focus around creating those right type of experiences using technology, really, Nikon. So that's the mode that we are in right now. Slightly long-winded answer, but hopefully that gives you a sense on how we see this impact.
No, absolutely. So I think that's so insightful, because of the fact that different sectors in India look at this digitization and innovation in different ways. So it's very interesting to hear what you just told us. Moving on, I would like to ask you if you can elaborate on some of the crucial challenges faced by large enterprises in general in India, and how does digitization help in addressing them? I know that the question is a little broad, but we just wanted to get a sense of understanding about these large enterprises and how they look at solving.
Absolutely, absolutely. See, one of the biggest, I think, like I said, I think if I continue from the previous conversation, the theme of digitalization is something that is now very well ingrained, into every fabric of, I think this world today, right? Which means all the decision makers, the people, the organizations, and end users like us, all of us, understand the value of it. And I think, especially for a large organization, one of the biggest things that I would say is, especially with the kind of the headwinds that we are seeing globally, what is definitely happening is, where do we make those investments, right? So should we make the call? It is important to make the call, but equally important is, do we have the money to spend on that? And that's where I was talking about maximizing the amount of, the value that you're able to generate from the investments that we make. So I think one of the challenges that we see, especially with large organizations, is really around having a kind of a top-down push, right? Which means the leadership has to align on some of their objectives, or what I would call as their initiatives, right, that they want to work on. So for example, something could be, hey, I want to actually optimize, the way I'm running my business, let's say by 2%, for example. Somebody wants to say, I want to have a high growth value, and I want to impact, let's say, a completely new customer base, which I wouldn't have done otherwise, right? So there could be some of these big imperatives that a large organization has to think through. And when they break those imperatives down into initiatives, then what you do is you look across work streams, right? Each initiative can plan up into multiples of work streams. And then those work streams can actually be executed as projects, right? Where people can then, build a product or enhance something, or, rewire something, and so on and so forth. So to your question, Nikon, it's really a buy-in and, aligning all the horses, so to say, right, to what you really want to achieve as a goal. And when you're able to align that and then break it down, it's much, much easier. What we see is there is somebody's, especially in a large organization, the decision making can be democratized, and hence a lot of things can happen in silos. So it's important to have a top-down push, which is one way of how you should look at. Second is an important dimension is also the laws of the land, right? So for example, if you're within the geography of India, and if you're in, let's say, healthcare and life sciences as an industry, it's a regulated industry. So hence there are governances and rules and, regulatory norms that kicks in, which kind of gets applied in the context of the industry. That's another important push that needs to be thought through as well, right? So how do you, build the right ecosystem that supports and organizes to the laws of the land, but at the same time also has a great experience for its customers, right? So that, I would say, is the second important challenge that needs to be addressed. And I think an important topic that kind of, I've been speaking about has been on this whole theme of environmental social governance, right? The ESG. This is a big impact, and especially with all the 195 countries signing up through the IPCC. it is very important for companies to kind of look at driving sustainability as a theme, and sustainability through the lens of technology, right? I think is an important theme that has started to emerge as well. So organizations have to start looking future forward, right? In terms of saying, what does it mean to me as a firm? And hence, how do I rewire myself? So I would say these are some of the top challenges, Nikon, that I would say for a large enterprise, to be successful, to be looked at.
Right. So, sir, what would you say are some of your crucial learnings that you've had in the space of technology and innovation, specifically to the Indian context in the last 20 years?
Sorry, if I did I get your question right? You said, what are some of the crucial learnings that we had in the technology and innovation in the last 20 years? Okay. Thanks, Nikon. So for the question, right, see, what I would say is, I think we have always, I think as a culture, we have probably always learned to figure things out, right? And as humans, it's a very natural tendency because our brains are wired in a very interesting way, where you pose a problem at us and then we say, okay, I know how to solve this, right? So it's a very natural mindset, and this is something that we have seen through, whether it's through Pavlov's experience, experiments, or otherwise, right? I think this has always been something consistently coming through. And then whether you look at a geography, which basically means it's a culture of people sitting there, eventually it is people, right? And you can apply this to any geography. In the context of India, what I have always seen working well, really, Nikon, is our ability to, kind of define standards, right? I think from being a developing nation to becoming a lot more, as I would say, a technology superpower where we are today, I think we have started defining what should be the industry norm for, some of the stacks, right? So I think that's the progression that I've seen Team India do, whether it has been with Aadhaar, right, or whether it has been with defining an India stack, or whether it has been with defining, our UPI as a payment, which is now, being now taken and looked at from a global initiative. So I think that's the way I see, Team India basically becoming powerful and successful. So in the last 20 years, I think we have used our power, our collective powers of technology and innovation to actually define a lot of these standards. And we continue, and this is not just this, I'm just talking about from one sector, but if you look across multitudes of sectors, we continue to thrive and innovate every day. And I think it's been very heartening to see some of these things as we keep progressing.
Absolutely. So, sir, I'm down to my last question, which is, what is your vision for this space in the next 5 years?
See, I think the only thing that is going to be constant is change. I am, and maybe this is again an often repeated phrase, but I think it's something that I associate myself with. And the way I was telling you my own personal life and how I've been here, I think what will continue to happen in the next 5 years is the pace of change is going to be that much more faster, right? If something took, let's say, a few years before a change happened, now it is in in terms of hours and minutes and days, right? I think it's no longer a long gestation time before something impacts. So the next 5 years, I'm not an oracle to predict, but what I would definitely say is the pace of change is going to be very, very high. And what it means for each one of us is we will have to constantly look around the bend, right? Which means, you should be preparing not for today, you should be preparing for tomorrow. And then this applies for us as individuals, or this applies to, to an organization as well, right? And that, I think, is what is going to be, future focused. And this is where I keep saying, right, given an architect's background, you always want to be future ready, which means, you need to constantly look around the bend and say, how do you prepare for it? So the example of ESG that I talked about is something that is going to come in the next few years. But I think if we don't prepare for it now, you will eventually start, facing that as a headwind at some point in time. And what definitely pandemic has taught us is that we cannot, be in a space of, inertia, right? It has to be a constant change. So I think that's the fundamental culture change that I would say, all of us have to embrace, whether we are a firm or whether we are an individual. I would say kind of look around the bend.
Thank you, sir. I think that was brilliant. And it was really, really insightful from a very innovation and technology oriented perspective, which we were looking for. So thank you again. Thank you so much for being a part of Impact Talk. And it was a pleasure.
Same here, Nikon. Thank you so much for having me on this talk. Look forward to this conversations maturing as we keep going, further down the years. Thank you.